We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the February 13th edition of Free Association Radio, this incarnation being the Monday Mashup, where I kind of freestyle, get out there, talk about stuff, try to make some connections, connecting dots, dashes, you name it. This is what the show's about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Whitney Houston in the first 15 minutes or so. And I'm also going to be airing an interview that I did just last night with Charles Frith, who has a blog called Punk Planning. And Charles is a pretty brilliant analyst, writer, decoder. He's a recovering ad man. He is originally from England, and now he's hanging out in Thailand. And you can check out his blog, charlesfrith.com, and you can see what he does. He tweets a lot. I'm not sure how I hooked up with Charles, either through the Twitterverse or through the blog or whatever, but he's a very funny, very bright, intelligent guy. We riffed for about half an hour last night. We talked about what it was like to be in advertising and how the advertising mindset has helped him understand, in some ways, the high strangeness and manipulative environment that we're immersed in 24/7. So I'm going to play that a little bit later in the show. You can have that to look forward to. So right now, though, what I'd like to do is I'm going to touch on Whitney Houston, but I'm going to get a few things kind of off my chest before I get to the Whitney Houston piece. So I was listening to Coast to Coast on Saturday night. And I was listening to John B. Wells. All right, I want you all to strap yourselves in because for the next 60 minutes, it's going to get pretty turbulent. There's going to be some real heavy truth coming down. Okay, I'm tired. I'm tired of what's happening in the world, and we're gonna pull the ripcord, and we're gonna let it all just hang out. Okay. So I'm giving you fair warning. So this is how he was framing the show on Saturday night. He had Susan Lindauer on for about a half an hour, maybe less, maybe 20 minutes. If you don't know who Susan Lindauer is, she is apparently somebody who was an asset for the CIA. She knew a lot about the CIA. She knew a lot about the difference between agent and asset, and an operative, and she knew her CIA stuff, right? And what she was basically, her story is that she was one of the first people that was held against her will under the Patriot Act because she was going public with CIA material, specifically regarding 9/11. And she has written a book about 9/11 and her time with the CIA. And her whole thing is that she believes that it was a controlled demolition and that it was an error and a conscious error on the part of the administration to let the hijackers do their thing. So her premise for 9/11 was that it was both, right? That they created the demolition event and they had these guys sneak under the radar and fly those planes into the Twin Towers. And I gotta say, I disagree with her. This is my, I don't know exactly what happened with 9/11, but I got a pretty good idea. And I don't believe Saudi pilots or any of those guys, wherever they were from, were anywhere near those planes or those buildings. Do I think that they went to the flight schools and did all that shit and went to the strip clubs? Absolutely, because they wanted to be seen. They wanted to create kind of a paper trail for this experience to take place. But I think something very different happened with 9/11, and I believe that there were different people involved with 9/11, which she did not get into. So now, also during the show, there was no chance for anybody to call in. It's like, well, come on, man. Let's test this. Come on, let's put Susan Lindauer to the test. There was no calls from the audience. So then she went away. I don't know. Was I disappointed? Not really, because I've come to expect that these things are going to be truncated and trimmed and molded for consumption in ways that people don't understand. Meaning, likely, she's either been clockworked orange or she's fully conscious, controlled opposition. I don't know which. I don't necessarily trust her completely. Okay? So then he had this other guy come on who was like somebody who was in the FAA, was a flight instructor. He had a lot of government, apparently, connections. I forget the guy's name. And John Wells is a pilot as well. So, he spent like 3 hours with this guy and in his book. And he totally gets into the flight story and the whole, Arab pilots. I mean, he really, really goes down that path and promotes that version of 9/11. And again, John Wells is, okay, just give it to us. Just let it all hang out. All right, we're here. Go. It's like, no, why? Because the guy's not telling anything. He's not getting anywhere near the truth. And it was funny because I was, look, I've been doing this for years. Okay. I'm an astrologer. I do tarot readings. I've been reading people. I've done remote viewing. I've done psychic work for people in other parts of the world. I am working with material on different levels, and I'm listening to this guy, and he is lying through his teeth. I'm sorry, I can hear it in his voice in a big, big way. Big way. There was no congruency in that guy's voice. So, like, why are you having these people on the air? Come on now. That's ridiculous. Lost all credibility for me. I'm going to have to turn it off. Well, what do you expect? What do you expect? Coast to Coast AM is owned by Clear Channel Radio. That's the way it is. Oh, well. Whitney Houston. When you heard that Whitney Houston died, were you really surprised? I mean, it was kind of like not if, but when, right? And it's tragic, absolutely tragic. I put a blog post up on my site, and I looked at her chart, and there's some very interesting things going on with Chiron and Neptune in her chart. And she had Black Moon Lilith conjunct Neptune in Scorpio, exact in her eighth house. There's a lot about Whitney Houston we don't know, a lot. But what we do know is that by the time Bobby Brown got on the scene, her life was rapidly descending into a pit of hell. And what's amazing is that there's nobody around her to put the brakes on this stuff. Nobody. Did you ever hear of any stories about Whitney Houston going into rehab or anything like that? No. She was sucked dry. The succubuses of Babylon sucked her dry. It's been going on for well over a decade. And by the time, yesterday was just the dark culmination of a long ongoing process, or 2 days ago, rather. And now she'll be deified and glorified, and they'll sell hundreds of thousands of downloads and play her music, and they get all the ASCAP rights and fees, and continue to suck her dry, even past the grave, or from beyond the grave. It's interesting that it happened 6 days, almost 7, after the Super Bowl ritual with Madonna, on the eve of the Grammys, by the way. The timing is strange and suspicious, to say the least. And I noted on my blog that Madonna is a Leo, and she was the rising sun, the dawn of the new day, at the beginning of the week, and on the Sabbath. Whitney Houston, Leo, is the setting sun and is the bookend to a 6-day ritual, or at least it appears to be a 6-day ritual. Her daughter is in the hospital now, and she's having a nervous breakdown. It's tragic all around. And it's the game. It is the game. And the game claimed Whitney, claimed her a long time ago. Speaking of the game, I have yet to watch Nicki Minaj's homage to Linda Blair in The Exorcist from the Grammys, but I'm going to check that out after the show, maybe write about that. Does not surprise me one iota. I mean, Nicki Minaj is a multiple personality. I don't know if you've figured that out yet, but she is. She's a multiple personality, and likely, she's likely possessed. She loves this whole concept of possession. So why wouldn't she show up as Linda Blair and an homage to The Exorcist? I don't know if you saw the runway photos of her, and she's with some guy dressed as a pope. I mean, we are in a surreal place. Absolutely surreal. In fact, I looked at all the fashions from the runway. I sat there and I probably spent about half an hour going from picture to picture to picture of all these people that were on the runway or the red carpet at the Grammys, half of which I didn't even know. And I'm a music person, and there's like a bunch of people that I just don't know who the hell they are or why they're there, okay? It's like musical pop culture has really crossed my Rubicon. I had no clue who some of these people were. Deadmau 5, what is that? It was like some guy in a mouse head with half an ear and half a horn. I mean, what is Deadmau 5? Can somebody tell me? Skrillex? Who are these people? There was this one woman. She was a Russian artist, and her attire consisted of a fairly okay dress, and her right arm was a massive, like, machine gun, like a cyborg machine gun, like something you'd see in the Terminator. This was her right arm and part of her outfit. I'm like, we live in just an absolutely bizarre time, and it's going to get more bizarre. Just it's going to get more bizarre. There's no two ways about it. So the Grammys. Well, I'm going to go look at Nicki Minaj's bizarreness after the show, and maybe I'll do something on it. I also did a post on Jeremy Lin over the weekend, and that post got translated into Chinese. Some Chinese blogger picked up on my post. And I thought it was really interesting that Jeremy Lin scored 38 points against Kobe Bryant. He scored 36 points. And Jeremy Lin and Kobe Bryant share the same birthday, by the way. And I didn't know that going into the post. And one of the readers commented on that. It's like, snap, 0 degrees Virgo. How about that? 2 0-degree Virgo guys going up against each other. Anyway, Jeremy Lin sure doused the flames of the New York Giants, didn't he? That's pretty interesting stuff. I got to tell you, it was like the Giants had no time to like bask in the glory of the Super Bowl. None. All of a sudden, Jeremy Lin is on the scene, and they're just loving. They're loving Lin. It's great. I think it's totally great. And he happens to be a Christian to boot. So it's like, oh no, not another Christian, please, please. I'm pouring some coffee now. Hear that? It's the sound of coffee coming into my cup. My Mickey Mouse cup. So it's great. I think it's great. I think it's totally great. Speaking of Christians, I was listening to talk radio. You'll hear about this on the interview with Charles. I was listening to conservative talk radio for about 5 minutes yesterday. Barbara Simpson show on KSFO radio. This woman calls in. She's like, Barbara, I really don't know who I'm going to vote for. I mean, I've listened to all. I'm really, really, really. I'm at a real impasse. I just don't know. But I'll tell you who really does not get enough press is Rick Santorum. Every time he opens his mouth, he is really making sense to me. And, he has all the values that, I really relate to. And I think he needs more time. And so it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy will go to war at the drop of a hat. At the drop of a freaking hat. I mean, he said it. He'll push buttons right and left. He doesn't recognize the Palestinian people. They're a made-up people. Excuse me. I know Jay and I were getting on the liberals when he was on the show, but I got to tell you, the conservatives, they've got their own issues, man. They're really myopic. They've got their little touch points, and as long as those touch points are met, it works for them. God, Rick Santorum. So I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm going to go on the record that your nominee for the GOP is going to be Jeb Bush. All right, trust me on this. Said it before. I'll say it again. He will be the Republicans' nominee. It will be a brokered convention. Jeb Bush is going to emerge. And I think that he'll have maybe Marco Rubio or somebody like that, somebody young, up and coming. Maybe they'll throw in, who knows? I don't know. Chris Christie. No. Although Republicans like him. I don't know why. Just because he sounds tough. Republicans like people that sound tough. Do you know that? Do you notice that? They like tough-sounding people. Doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. Maybe they'll throw Paul Ryan in there, and they'll supplicate the Tea Party, the Tea Partiers. Maybe that's what they'll do. Went to Chinese New Year on Saturday night in San Francisco. God forbid I'm in a situation where there's a major disaster, because I had an insight into how people respond during major disasters by watching people at that parade. Anything goes. I mean, anything goes. People just, all they care about is themselves, in these large, massive crowd situations. They don't care about other people. And so what did I do? It's like, okay, well, I'm with my kid, and I've got him by my hand, and I'm not going to let us get, squashed or railroaded or anything like that. So I'm gonna get aggressive with the crowd as well. I'm gonna move. It's amazing though. People they don't give a shit in environments like that. It's human nature, I guess, or inhuman nature. But it was fun. It was cold. We saw the end of the parade, which was the big dragon, and lots of firecrackers. So it's a memory that I think my kid will have for a while. Okay, what I don't want to do is I don't want to take too much more time and not be able to play this interview with Charles Frith. So for the next 35 minutes or so, I'll be back right at the end of the show and sign off. You're going to hear me riffing with Charles Frith from Thailand. Now, the quality of the audio might be a little sketchy, but remember, he's in Thailand, I'm in California. And it is the magic of the internet, so we could do this. All right, here's myself and Charles Frith, recovering ad man and punk planner. Okay, so for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to drop into the world of Charles Frith, who I think I met on Twitter. I'm not sure quite how we met, but here we are, part of the planetary synergistic network of transformation that is spontaneously assembling right before our very eyes on a moment-to-moment basis. And I'm speaking with Charles through the magic of technology, and he's all the way in Thailand, 15 hours ahead of me. So his website is charlesfrith.com, and the subtext of his website is punk planning. We're gonna find out more about punk planning, but right now we're gonna say hi to Charles. Hello, Charles.
Hey, Robert. Great to talk to you.
Good to talk with you as well. So, I've been picking up your tweets and found a lot of the stuff that you've been posting on Twitter to be, really aligned with, what I post at times, and a lot of them are really linked to really salient articles or YouTube videos or things that you're posting, and it's all part of this daisy chain of planetary awakening that we're all going through right now. And then I found out that you used to be in advertising, and I was intrigued by that. And one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you, just besides just getting to know you and chat with you, was to find out more about your life as a quote unquote ad man or planner, as you have it titled in various parts of your website, and what that was like for you, and how you kind of shifted out of that, and how it's actually helped you kind of understand where we are right now in the story of our story.
Enormously. I mean, my career as a strategic planner or a creative planner, sometimes it's called, depending on what the task is it's not only it wasn't only a job, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking, because there are three disciplines within advertising that sort of kind of pull things together. There's lots of other jobs that are absolutely essential, but the three critical disciplines are creative, it's usually a copywriter and art director. There's an account guy, an account man, an account handler. He's the businessman, he's the business manager, he's the salesman, he's the problem fixer. And then there's the strategic planners, or the planners, who we do a range of functions, from the market research into people. What do people really think about this? What do they respond to? What do they want? What do they like? All that kind of stuff. And then we kind of move into that sort of that kind of grey area of, okay, guys, you're the creative team. We're not going to tell you what to come up with, but what we're going to try and do is make sure that you don't come up with brilliant ideas that don't work. So we kind of guide them into an area where they can play that will hopefully sort of increase sales and improve profits and all that kind of thing. So learning my trade, I was very lucky because I got picked up by one of the best agencies in London about a decade ago, or just over a decade ago, and I had phenomenal experience with some of the best people in the business. A very cool agency as well. If anything, it probably wasn't so good to be running around London on a Friday night or at the weekend telling people who you work for. It actually sort of distorted my reality of who I was, because I wasn't that good. I was just around good people, and I learned an awful lot from them. And so this business of mine taught me to think compulsively, 24/7. What is meaning? What is the meaning of meaning? Why am I thinking about the meaning of meaning? And all that sort of rubbish stuff that you either love it or you don't, And, I do. So it taught me to think compulsively in a sort of more ordered way about solving problems, because strategic planning or planning is a problem-solving function. What's your business problem? How are we going to solve that with communications? Or even, as I sometimes have some conflicts with, you know what? You can't fix your problem with advertising. Your brand is broken. You're just trying to extract value or money from people without actually contributing anything more. So it's been brilliant. I've loved it. I loved it. I still love it, but I no longer believe in the neoliberal capitalism model, which is really about creating money. But I'm all for wealth creation. I think wealth creation is a wonderful thing, but I think wealth creation has a lot more dimensions than how many beans have you got in the account.
Right.
It's the Apple thing, It's the light. You can't measure the light. You can't measure it.
Right. I agree. One of the things that I was able to glean from your brief post that I read about you was that, unlike some people who are in advertising, they will have horrific experiences, and they'll wake up one morning and they'll say, I can't do this anymore, and it's almost like an exorcism of sorts. But I didn't really get that from you. I think you really enjoyed what you did.
I did, but I always fought a little bit for humanity. So, like when I moved on from London and came to Asia, I first actually came when I was about 23 and stayed in 6 months working for a small agency. But first time I came to Asia and worked as the planning director, first ever planning director in the agency in this country, I always sort of fought for humanity, and so my experience in Asia was sort of multinational, moving around Asia, and actually I've sort of worked in other locations in Europe as well. But for example, when I was working with Coca-Cola, I pointed out to them that their distribution was absolutely dynamite. I mean, they delivered a bottle of Coke or can of Coke to pretty much anywhere in Asia. And I said, well, you know what? We're working on a low juice refreshment, and you want to claim that you're healthy and that you're for kids. Well, great. We know how to do that using sort of like very cute cartoon Japanese characters, all that kind of thing. But why don't we sort of own something like distribution of vitamins or something that sort of, give something back to the community? I might have to use that word, but give something back to people.
Right.
And that doesn't cost a lot, but actually just leverages your fantastic distribution. And, I couldn't sell it into them because all they're into is the profit thing. But, I always treated my work as a game in that respect. Like, what can we get our clients to pay for?
Right.
Because I believe that, what goes around comes around, and that, generosity sort of like, well, basically generosity is an investment.
Yeah. I totally agree. And you have that quote that's at the end of your story about your brief bio about being in the ad world, which was something about it's nice to have everything, but it's everything to be nice, or something like that.
Yeah. It's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice.
That's it.
I made all the mistakes of being, sort of young guy in a great place, and hubris and ego. I've made more mistakes than anybody along the way, but fortunately, I'm very grateful for this. The universe has told me, you know what, you're not that special, but equally you're quite capable of being part of something that's a lot more interesting. So ego is something that I constantly kind of examine, because as you may have noticed on Twitter, I'm very argumentative with the military-industrial complex side of things, and I realize that for some people it might come across as aggressive. But all I'm saying is, you know what, you guys, you make a living out of death and destruction, you're beginning to see through you. And so, but equally, I'm very cautious that I don't start to sort of believe myself as some sort of warrior against the establishment. All I'm doing is trying to say, come over to the good side, guys. Really, that's what I'm trying to do.
So what is punk planning? You just kind of described planning a little bit. What is punk planning?
That's very simple. I mean, punk music is... okay, when I was working in Beijing, this was brought home to me quite clearly, which is that you kind of wander around a country that was, lockstep communism for decades, and, had millions died through the Cultural Revolution or the Great Leap Forward. And then you're looking at these punks, and I'm going, well, Jesus, these guys look like they're straight from the King's Road in the late 80s, when I was sort of working in London for the first time. And so what I realized is that although the British, there are some things that I'm very proud of the British contribution towards, the universe, particularly the music and the creative arts and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that's very obvious is that the British lost their empire and actually haven't done much since. We're just an old, sometimes disgracefully fading, but often gracefully fading empire. The British gave it away, which was the smart move, i.e. they knew that, like the Romans, that you can't hold on to these things forever. You have to be flexible, and sometimes giving away is merely sort of like, holding on to something in a way. Mm-hmm. The great expression in Asia, which is the tightest grip, the open palm is the tightest grip, and, there's something philosophical about that. So when I spotted punk in Asia, and I thought, these guys, they're inspired by the punk movement of the 70s. And I absolutely love the idea of punk. And I happen to think that, John Lydon or Johnny Rotten is an intellectual. If you look at what he was saying, his lyrics are not stupid. The guy wasn't stupid. He could see through it all. We've been blessed by these characters along the way. The Johnny Rottens, the Bill Hicks, the Terence McKenna, people who could see through the farce and the artifice. And so the reason why it became punk planning was it's a literature, punk planning. Right. But equally, it's like my little sort of, I think you did something interesting with punk.
Well, the first wave of punk rock, that's when I was in high school, and I was, my adult.
It's New York, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's the New York Dolls and all those. We stole it. We stole all your good stuff.
Well, it's true, but I think you kind of took it to another level, though. I mean, my adolescence, my rebellion was converging right around the same time that I had the first New York Dolls record, but the Sex Pistols were the band that I've been waiting for, and the Sex Pistols crossed my path right around the age of 17, and I love the first wave of punk because it's so situationist, and there's a great deal of irony and humor, and not taking itself seriously at all. I think it's a very underrated social commentary and period in modern culture, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it is an art form, and you're right. The spontaneity and low fidelity of punk and DIY kind of culture. Pick up a guitar, 3 chords, and get stuck in. That's very much the blogging internet side of things. It's low cost. You don't have to be a professional. Get in, and start talking about what's on your mind. So, I think the Sex Pistols took it to the next place. But I'm always very grateful. I'm very critical of America because obviously you're the big boys on the block in terms of military might. But deep down, I'm very, very fond of America's sort of original ideals. And the house thing in Chicago. I was there when that got picked up by the British and taken to Ibiza for Balearic Beach, and then sort of came back as acid. And oh my God, you guys started this stuff.
Yeah, we have a penchant for doing that. We also have a penchant for now, at least ever since 9/11 happened, starting other things, and it looks like we're
You certainly went over. Yeah, that changed everything. Although, my favorite thing these days is I'm so grateful for 9/11. Without 9/11, I wouldn't have known about the Federal Reserve. I wouldn't have known about the book Brookings Institute. I wouldn't have known who the Trilateral Commission were. I wouldn't have questioned the military's objectives. I would have believed mainstream media. The most toxic thing in our lives is being told what to think by for-profit entities. Amazing. I mean, I wouldn't have questioned it, but because of 9/11, I was woken up. I really was. Then it took a few years. I didn't. It was like, really? Oh my God, really? No, okay. Go back, look at stuff and all that kind of thing. But in the last year, I've pretty much thrown everything all my energy into trying to be loud and ring the alarm bell a bit. Say, look, guys, it's not good stuff is not going on. But, deep down, this virus in our species, for want of a better description, is transnational. It goes above countries. It must be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you bring that up as 9/11 as this point of acceleration, because obviously it accelerated an agenda that was already baked, with Project of the New American Century and all that stuff, a clear break. I mean, that was ready to go, and they hit the accelerator with 9/11. But conversely, it's also accelerated an awakening process in some people, and obviously, you're part of that, and you're here to share that with us. But now here we are. We're 12 years after the fact, and we're seeing the same script being unrolled again with Iran. I mean, as a planner, and now an enlightened planner, I would love your take on this.
Okay, well, the first thing is that what I think is not important, because there are lots and lots of different types of thinking out there. So, as I understand it, 50% of the U.S. public is interested or is broadly accepting of bombing Iran, basically the same whole weapons of mass delusion thing. So, in a way, let's start with them, because the other opinions will be sort of in between, something from what a load of bullshit through to I question my government's judgment on this one. It's this group of people who just go, well, the TV told me, and the TV's a big business, it makes money, so therefore it's serious, and it's not making things up. Well, no, that's where we have to start saying, when we do stuff for money, it's totally different than from when we do stuff for doing the right thing. Well, I've been very lucky with a couple of mentors along the way. One of the reasons for pub planning was I was very close with a former pub, and he told me about seeing the Sex Pistols live for the first time at university. He told me about the music scene there, and how it worked and how it grew and all that kind of thing. The other thing I had was I had a political mentor, my friend from New Jersey, that just threw up an awful lot of books at me that taught me sort of traditional politics as opposed to power politics. Mm-hmm. And I think what comes out of that is this idea that you can either sort of look at the coin one way and say, well, if it's money involved, it's obviously buttoned down and serious, and there's no time for games. Or else you can say, and this comes a quote from my political mentor, which is that my mom taught me the only thing I need to know, which is the only thing you need to know is the difference between right and wrong. And that's my bottom line, which is maybe I or we deceive ourselves sometimes. But as long as we're asking ourselves, did I do the right thing there? Was that the right move? Or at least, even if we do the wrong thing sometimes, to be aware that we've done something wrong. And so, for me, the whole for-profit framework of reality, it's completely fake. And that's why I can't work in advertising anymore, because there's only so many meetings you can sit around a table and listen to people who are just they don't have any other dimensions to them, because they're obliged to pay bills, and if we get rid of the bill paying, well, then we don't have to think about invading countries to pay for it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But here we are. We're seeing the same script being rolled out again. Instead of weapons of mass destruction and yellow cake and rods from Niger, now it's the Bushashir plant, and and all this other hype and fear, and people are getting bombarded with this now constantly. So just like after 9/11, where they would ask a person on the street, what about Saddam Hussein? And they would automatically link Saddam Hussein with 9/11 because that was actually happening via Fox News, and we're getting something very similar now, and this compression of repetition that isn't even really correct or right, and nobody's even asking themselves anymore, what about diplomacy? Even if there is an issue, and I don't believe there is, diplomacy is like not even on the table anymore.
Yeah, those people who refuse to entertain ambiguity, different narratives or different interpretations, those people are gone, I'm afraid. We've lost them. We're not going to get them back. They are so sold into their materialist lifestyle and their belief in what their television screen tells them, and the pursuit of wealth. They're gone, I'm afraid. What it comes down to is that when the world changes, and it is changing, is that they're going to find that it's increasingly intolerable to hold it together. We're watching people fall apart constantly. Hillary Clinton after the Tahrir Square protest. What did she say? I mean, she came out and said it's blunt. These Mubarak family are all family friends. What's going on here? Are you pro-democracy or not? Are you giving them $3 billion a year or not? And frankly, I think half the people are kind of waking up and going, you know what? I don't really believe this anymore. And if we look back to the original Gulf War or the invasion of Iraq by Bush Senior, okay, well, that was more like 90% of the people said, yeah, let's go for it, or 80%. We're now down to 50%. So that's progress, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that the other 50%, well, we might whittle it down to 40 over the next year, but there's got to be a good third of people who are so myopic and self-centered that they would never entertain compassion, scrutiny, fair play, and all those sort of things that sort of make us brilliant as a species. Because that's why we are brilliant. We're not brilliant because we're a warring species. We're pretty fucking good warriors. I have to say that. I think our future's well assured if we can make it through this lot. We're not going to tolerate outside messing around in a big way. People want to come on, but broadly speaking, yeah, I try and charm them. I've tried all sorts of things, and I feel they're so attached. And this is the Buddhist attachment thing. They're so attached to their reality that they've lost their humanness. And very often they're manipulated. They're just manipulated beings by the media and by the elite.
Yeah, I mean, I where I see it here, every now and then I listen to conservative talk radio, just to wrap my head around how these people think. And before I dialed you up, I dropped in for about 5 minutes, and I listened to a woman talk about the positive aspects of Rick Santorum running for president, and it was and it was all this kind of the same kind of accolades and feel good sort of kinesthetic relationship to Santorum that a liberal or a progressive would have had for Obama in 2008. It had very little to do with any kind of logical, thinking. It was really more about an emotive response to this guy and how his values, whatever they might be, lined up with her values. And she said, okay, this is a value-related decision I'm making. But there's no real critical thinking going on with these folks because in order to do that, they would really have to dismiss some of their most cherished notions of their place in the universe in order to disentangle from that. And that's hard. I think to your point, that's hard for people to do.
It is hard. We're all attached to our realities, and the only decent one is the one, or rather the better way, is to question our realities. Now, if you're down a line of thinking, which is, I think you used the word value related, which basically says I'm emotionally attached to this person's worldview. Well, you know what? That's almost like saying I've given up on reason, and I think that taps into the reason why this thing's gonna buckle and fall over, which is the absurdity of it. The absurdity of a military machine that is urinating on soldier corpses, enemy soldier corpses, flying SS flags, shooting innocents of up to 30 people or whatever, Frank whatever his name is, in Iraq. You know, we're talking about basically emotional or a value attachment to psychopathy. That's not good.
I totally agree, and I think here's my take on that. I think one of the reasons why people turn a blind eye to this is because they are still dealing with very latent, or maybe not so latent, racial undertones in their non-thinking. For instance, these people are Muslims, they're not Christians, and they're dark-skinned, which puts a whole other layer on it. And I've seen this with Christians, and that, you know, theoretically, I mean, Jesus would say, hey, you can't do that to anybody. Doesn't matter what color skin they have. But I've seen this with Christians, that somehow they're able to justify this because of the difference in their faith and ultimately the difference in their skin tone as well. They give this thing permission, and that's the dark part that I think is really unexamined.
I think in a way those points that you make are extremely valid. But bottom line is, it's a superiority complex. Oh look, Christianity runs the world. We go off and fight evil elsewhere, and it's like being on the winning team or the winning side. It's sort of like, you know, the winning team for a period of time. That's falling apart. And so these people actually believe it's a superior, Weltanschauung, to use the German expression. It's a superior worldview.
Right.
They're not Christian. And let's be honest, the Christian body count, or the body count of the Christians through the American and NATO military, is the highest in history. No other religion has killed more people than Christianity. Now, I don't say that Islam or the other sort of Abrahamic faith, Judaism, wouldn't do the same if they were in charge. All religion is corrupt. It's a man-made construct. You know, the minute you put down stuff on paper is the minute you leave out interpretation and ambiguity, or rather, you know, open it up to so much interpretation it becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
So, you know, these kind of people, you know, Robert, I think they're frightened as well. I genuinely think they fear life and the world and reality, and you know, I'm not gonna hold back. You know, when I sort of realized, hold on a moment, I believed all this stuff. You know, I was lying in bed, you know, one time, and I had my sort of my epiphany, my Damascene moment, and I realized I'd been not just wrong, but tragically wrong about my estimation of people's or groups' intent. And you know, that's a very humbling experience. It's a destroying process, and you know what? You can't rebuild until you destroy yourself. And so I suspect many people have been through that. I've got good friends who were like, "Oh no, we never believed that, Charles." And I'm like, "Oh God, I've probably been a little bit more gullible of the system in the past because of one reason or another." But I've been through this, you know, through the fire. I've changed the way that I think at enormous cost to me. I mean, we're talking, you know, not just the you know, the monthly beans. It's also you know, taking a position which attracts fierce criticism and ridicule. I mean, I'm arguing with mainstream media.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't mind because I'm right, or rather, my intention is what is the better way. Mainstream media is just selling a message. It's so unthinking.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, can you answer me a question? I've always wanted to ask an English person this question. How did England allow a swarming network of CCTV cameras to be set up not just all over London, but throughout most of England? How did that happen?
Okay, that's well. First of all, one of the Fabian Society are a great example of an unknown group of people who get up to shit that is a little bit scary and malevolent. If you look at their members over the years, the Fabian Society is we can change anything if we do it slow enough. Now, you probably recognise, but not a lot of people do, that most of the big changes are planned over decades.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually. You know, one of the things about the human genetic sort of, or the human genome is that we can tolerate massive amounts of abuse and destruction. We can throw ourselves over trenches to sort of face artillery and bullets and lying in the mud with, you know, stumps of limbs and guts and all that. All right. You know, we can do it because if our mind is set on something, we can face the unfaceable. And so when I look at the CCTV issue, there's a couple of points that I just want to open up. One is it was planned. So from the 80s, it was like, you know what? Let's make Britain the surveillance society. And, you know, you get a few CCTV cameras for speeding, and, you know, everyone's like, well, what a great idea. You know, we've had a few kids run over here. That's how they think. They're smart, they're clever, they're sophisticated. They go in with the thin end of the wedge. They change policy on something that everybody agrees on. We've had enough kids killed on these roads. You know, I used to drive from Southampton to London very regularly, and, you know, after a while you see those flowers by trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, it's sad. So you go, yeah, CCTV is a great idea. And then it sort of becomes, you know, or you know, CCTV and speeding is pretty much the same thing, speed cameras. Okay, but that's one thing, which is you can change anything around humans. If it's slow enough, they'll adapt to it. So we have to be very, very cautious of that.
Right.
The second thing is that the intention is not so much to spy on people, but to create a time where they studied us as a spied-on society. So, you know, they weren't fully sure of where it would go, but, you know, once they started rolling out the most number of CCTV cameras in the world, you know, it becomes a business. You know, there are various interests that make money out of it and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, people don't have that much to hide, I think. So it's actually kind of backfired on them. What it does, its most potent force is we watch you, and if we can watch you here, just think what we're doing to you digitally on your IPs on the internet.
Right.
You know, it's basically saying you have no privacy.
Yeah.
The state knows everything about you. So how did they do it? They did it slowly. Why did they do it? Because they wanted to create a climate of, not climate of so much of fear, but a climate of you will do what you're told. And my personal pet theory is we will see later on this year, during the Olympics perhaps, the reason for we've got you, you know, under observation 24/7 down to, you know, your thoughts. We know what you're thinking. We can tell what you're thinking from algorithms on Google. We can tell where you're moving about. We're tracking you in cars. Every new car, Conquer for Cash, is tracked. And so basically it's like saying, let's see if we can break the will of the British people. And you know what? I think that's where they're going to come unstuck, because, you know, the British, and I'm very critical of the British as well as of all nation states. The whole idea of nation states is ridiculous. But I think the British are going to kick back when they realise they've been duped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. You know, the proliferation of CCTVs is happening here in a very big way. So it's, you know, it starts at intersections with traffic cameras, but it's becoming much more ubiquitous.
But you've got your drones now, haven't you?
We've got the drones. Have you seen the quadrotors? Have you seen those guys?
Yeah, I sort of keep an eye on all that stuff through wire.
Wow.
And but actually, you know, I would say to people, don't get too paranoid about this. This is desperation on their part. You know, how much information we all know now through the Washington Post's fantastic investigation into the top secret state of America, that the American intelligence community and you know, the Homeland Security are so overwhelmed with information They turn up at meetings, they have 100 slides whizzed past them in half an hour, and then they're on to the next one. They don't absorb anything.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. It's corporatism. It's security corporatism taken to an extreme. The only thing people have got to do is start kicking back and saying, we're not paying for it. We're not paying for it. You pay for it. We're not paying for it.
Right. Yes. Common Purpose. Did you ever run across Common Purpose in England?
No, I'm not familiar with that name. Are they an organization?
Yeah, you should look up Common Purpose.
I will do.
Yeah. So Charles, I'm afraid I'm going to have to sign off here.
Thank you very much for getting in touch. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I've also enjoyed reading. I've been moving into the astrological world over the last few months, and I find that your writing, your work there has been very instructive. So thanks for the opportunity to share a few thoughts. And I'm with you, American people, particularly. I might criticize you, but I'm with you.
Okay.
Hard.
Well, we'll catch up with you somewhere down the road, and we're glad you're with us.
Look forward to that.
Okay, thanks, Charles.
Bye.
That was Charles Frith, all the way from Thailand. And, somebody wants to call in. It's a 901 number. I don't get a lot of calls. Let's take their call. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Lenise?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. I just tuned in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had Charles Frith on from Thailand. So he's a former advertising guy and talking about his life post-advertising and what's going on with the state of the world. So anyway, I just thought I'd chime in and say hi. I thought it was you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign off though because we're at the end of the show.
Oh wow! Did you speak astrologically on Whitney's death?
It's on my website.
Okay, good.
I'll go over it on my show on Wednesday.
Okay. Glad I didn't miss it, but I'll check the website as well. I figured you were kind of tuning into what's going on with that astrologically.
Yeah, there's something happening there for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
okay. Well, I'll talk.
We'll see you on Wednesday, Lenise.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was our friend Lenise and Charles Frith, punk planner from Thailand. I gave him the bait. Common Purpose. You can go check that out now. I'm sure he'll have a lot of fun with that. So thank you for listening to the show today, and thank you for being a part of the experience, being here on the planet with me simultaneously. We're all together now. We're all here now. It doesn't matter where the point of contact is. It's all one point of contact in a very ubiquitous and very innovating kind of way. So with that in mind, I hope you take your point of contact out into the world today and make a difference in your life and hopefully in the lives of others, no matter what it might be, whether it's a piece of art, a cookie that is delicious, or reconnecting with somebody from your past that you haven't done in quite a while. Why don't you go ahead and do that and make the world just a little bit smaller for you and the rest of us. Okay, that's it. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks again to Charles Frith, punkplanning.com. Check him out. Check out his content. And we'll be back on Wednesday navigating the astrological mix. Until then, be very, very well.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.